Welcome everyone to another episode of the Retro Wrestling Reviews. Fredo Esparza here, and this edition will be covering Championship Wrestling from Florida from April 21st, 1976. I think this is one of the older Florida shows, at the very least complete Florida shows available on YouTube. I don't know if there's more available on other places because there hasn't really been a lot of stuff posted. I know there's a lot of actually Florida is probably one of the more incomplete promotions that are available on, be it on YouTube or people who have them on DVD, amongst tape traders, DVD traders. There's some stuff I think there's some stuff on WWE Network, but it's mostly like just a smattering of matches, and some complete shows are available, but most of the complete shows they're kind of like, they'll have like one episode from 1980, then there will be like a bunch of clips from that time period, and then, we'll fast forward to 82, and then there's a lot more as the years go on. This episode I thought was a good episode, mostly because it's built around the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and at that time, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Terry Funk. The matches themselves, I didn't think were that great, except for maybe one. But I think if you're watching older wrestling, I think at times you just want to, you heard about these wrestlers and you kind of want to learn more about them. And so this is kind of more of a good show to watch for that purpose. But it's a very entertaining show just because of the Dusty Rhodes, Terry Funk stuff. And very early on, we get Gordon Solie welcoming us to the show. He tells everyone what's going to be on schedule for this week's episode. And he has Dusty Rhodes join him at the announcer's table. And Gordon Solie explains that Dusty Rhodes recently pinned NWA World Heavyweight Champion Terry Funk in a non-title match. He apparently then Solie talks about how Dusty Rhodes suffered an injury in the match and was rushed to the hospital due to a paralysis on the right side of his face. And Dusty Rhodes actually cuts a promo and has he shows that he's actually like moving his what part of his lip is moving and the other part isn't. One side of his face is paralyzed, and I think for a long time, people just assumed that was just Dusty Rhodes being a really good character, actor, whatever you want to call it, in pro wrestling. But I think Jim Ross later on revealed that Dusty Rhodes had actually suffered through Bell's palsy at certain periods of his life and during his career. And that was one of the points where he actually was, he was dealing with Bell's palsy at that point. So, I mean, it kind of worked for this promo and for this feud at that point, just because as we go along on this show, we hear about Dusty Rhodes talking about this. He mentioned how doctors had told him that his face would be fine in due time. And Rhodes vowed revenge on Rock Hunter, who was managing at that time the Missouri Mauler, who actually was the one who was trying to collect on a bounty that was placed on Dusty Rhodes by the Funk family. It was actually more so Terry Funk, but they later referred to Dory was also involved in this, Dory Jr. And Dusty Rhodes vowed that he would get revenge on everyone that was involved in this, and that bounty that was placed by Terry Funk would never be collected. So we go from that to the first match on the show, which is Tom Jones versus the Great Mephisto, with the Great Mephisto winning. This match I thought was just an okay match. I'd never seen the Great Mephisto wrestle before this. I think I might have seen him wrestle at least one time, but it was very long time ago. But this was very, Tom Jones I've seen a few times just because I think he was in world class for a few years. I know he worked other territories, Mid-South as well. So he was somebody that I was a little more familiar with, but very basic match. Mephisto slams Tom Jones into the turnbuckles and slams him down for the pin, and that's pretty much the end of it. From there, they air the closing seconds of a battle royal that was featuring Andre the Giant. And the final four in this match were actually Andre the Giant, Bill Watts, Dusty Rhodes, and Bob Roop. And Dusty Rhodes ended up drop kicking while Watts and Roop were trying to throw out Andre the Giant. Dusty Rhodes drop kicks both Watts and Roop, and they basically just fall out of the ring, and that leaves Rhodes and Andre the Giant in the ring for the battle royal. And Dusty Rhodes decides to jump over the top rope to give Andre the win. We go from that to Haystacks Calhoun. This is somebody I think I've read more about than actually watched him wrestle. I do remember watching him wrestle because I had one of those. I can't remember I think it was one of those wrestling classics type of VHS tapes they used to sell in the 1980s, and they would always have like 12 matches. So you would sometimes get like Haystacks Calhoun in there. Luthez, there was always a Luthez match, a Buddy Rogers match. So I had actually seen Haystacks Calhoun before this, but Haystacks Calhoun won a handicap match against Jim Dalton and George McCreary. And basically what they made McCreary and Dalton do is they had to work as a tag. They had to work the match as a tag match, and Calhoun would stay in the ring. So they couldn't be in there at the same time. That didn't last very long as they both got involved, but that wasn't they were no challenge for Calhoun. He ended up slamming both. Like I think he slammed one and then just like splashed the other and just put them both on top of each other and pinned them both. And then after the match, Dalton and McCreary tried to attack Haystacks, and he just tossed them both out again, out of the ring. And Gordon Solie was very impressed, but for me, I mean, it was something that I think. If I was watching this as a kid, it would have been, very entertaining. But at this point in time, it's kind of like, I don't know. That's the thing. I think we don't see that many wrestlers of that type nowadays. I don't know if it would even work now. But for that time period, I mean, Haystacks Calhoun was a big star. So to have him on this TV show, a big deal for them. And I think this was pretty close to I think this was pretty like late in his career also. So very basic match. And, like I said, it was it was something that was entertaining because for the nostalgia of it, if you've not seen Haystacks Calhoun, this is a good way to see him for the first time. After that, you have the Missouri Mauler with Rock Hunter beating Bill Dromo. This was also another match that was just okay. Very basic. Mauler charged at Dromo and landed a knee at the back of Dromo and pretty much covered him for the pin, and that was it. What really took this episode to a new level was the next segment. Terry Funk was joining Gordon Solie, and Terry Funk was very unapologetic about Dusty Rhodes having half of his face paralyzed. He was in fact so upset that he was only partially paralyzed that he said he called his brother Dory Funk Jr. and told him to stop the check that he was going to pay for somebody actually pulling off the bounty on Dusty Rhodes because he was not permanently injured. And the Missouri Mauler and Rock Hunter decided to join the interview, and they were very upset when Terry Funk told them that he wasn't going to get the money because he did not fulfill the obligation of permanently injuring Dusty Rhodes. It was only partial facial paralysis. Mauler got very upset. Mauler, from his understanding, was that he basically stopped Dusty Rhodes from challenging for the NWA World Title, and that's why he deserved the $10,000 bounty, because he fulfilled that obligation. But Mauler did agree that he did not that if Terry Funk wanted him to be finished, he would be okay paralyzing Dusty's entire face, which I thought was, and he had told him he would not quit until he got the job done. Terry Funk then got very upset and told them that they were not the only, he told the Missouri Mauler and the Rock Hunter that they were not the only people that were allowed to collect on the bounty, that it was available for any man who wanted a shot, who took out Dusty Rhodes. Rock Hunter starts bringing up that he had brought in Pak Song to actually also be involved in this. Terry Funk didn't really care about that. He just kept telling them that they did not fulfill their obligation, and he was very upset about it. Gordon Solie then chimes in and says the Mauler actually has a bounty placed on him, and nobody knows who placed it on him. And Mauler told Terry Funk that it didn't matter that he had a bounty on him. He was going to fulfill his obligation, and he would make sure that Dusty Rhodes would be finished. Terry Funk was not pleased about it and told him, I kept yelling at him and told him, this was a bounty that was open to more people. And Terry Funk, you see them arguing as they walk off. They go to a break, and Terry Funk returns and tells Gordon Solie that he, after having spoken to the Missouri Mauler privately, that he decided to give him one more chance to collect on the bounty. So at least we know that is going to continue on. Unfortunately, and like I said, I would have loved to have seen like more episodes of this, and there isn't. I don't know if WWE actually got that stuff, if there's even more of it available in from the stuff they actually purchased, the Florida wrestling that they might have purchased from the Graham family. I'm hoping there is, just because from watching a lot of these promotions, Florida seems like the one that's way ahead of everyone. And this is like in 1976 when, everybody was a little bit more, still more wrestling ahead of storytelling, as far as storylines go. They were ahead of that at that point. Memphis was also very good at that as well. The next match was Thunderbolt Patterson teaming up with Billy Robinson to beat Carl Von Steger and Roger Kirby. A couple of weird tag teams there, just because I wouldn't expect Patterson and Robinson teaming up. Although, as I started watching more Georgia and Mid-Atlantic, I noticed that there's a lot of interaction with all those guys. So it's not as weird once you get around to watching all these guys teaming up. But this match I thought was an okay tag match. Patterson actually looked a lot better than I was expecting him, because I've heard a lot of people talk about how he's not a very good worker. Robinson was outstanding, as was Kirby. But it was just an okay match. From there, we get to a match that I was really looking forward to watch. Frank Goodish teamed with King Curtis to beat Jerry Briscoe and Abe Jacobs. This was a little bit of a better match than the previous. Actually, I thought they were both similar, just because there really wasn't. And also the other match had Billy Robinson, was outstanding. This match was a little lower than the other one. But this one, the highlight of this was really seeing Frank Goodish, who would later become Bruiser Brody, wrestling under the other name. And he was still a big guy, and this was a really, like I said, a really two big guys taking on Briscoe and Jacobs, and they pretty much handled them they manhandled them late in the match. Just an okay match. I hadn't seen King Curtis wrestle that much. I think the first time I saw King Curtis might have been when he was with WCW, part of the Dungeon of Doom. When I first saw that, like in, 95, I was always curious about King Curtis, so I started that was very early in the internet days, and I was able to get some information on him at that point. I think I may have even once YouTube was created, that's one of the first things I would look for, just guys that I always wondered what they were like as wrestlers. And actually even tape trading, I remember I think I might have tape traded for something like Florida Wrestling at that point. So he was one of those names that I was always curious about, and eventually did end up watching him. And this was actually, like I said, it was more of a nostalgia thing, just because I'd never seen either one. I've seen plenty of the Briscoes. They're in a lot of the early 80s Mid-Atlantic and Florida, Georgia videos that you can find online. The match of this show, the best match on the show, was actually the one that followed the main event. Steve Kern beating Bob Orton Jr. via DQ. This was actually not that long of a match, but what they did was really good. Bob Roop actually joined Gordon Solie at the announcer's table for commentary. He was at that point already teaming up with Bob Orton Jr. And you kind of see a connection with Bob Roop and Orton Jr. I would assume throughout the 70s, but you see it a lot in the early 80s when they were also in Mid-South Wrestling, when they were teaming up with Paul Orndorff as well, and going after Junkyard Dog. But this match was really good. Unfortunately, it didn't go that long, just because I think the show was coming to an end, and also they wanted to have Bob Roop. Bob Roop got involved late in the match as Kern got Bob Orton Jr. in a roll-up, and the referee was about to start the count. Bob Roop charged into the ring, and he didn't actually hit Kern. He just charged into the ring, and then the referee as soon as Roop came in, the ref saw him and disqualified Orton Jr. for Roop just trying to get involved. And but like I said, this was a really good match. I would say if you're gonna watch this show and you're just you're just more into just the premise of what's happening on this show, I would say watch the two interviews, the Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes interviews, because you also get Terry Funk's great, him just arguing with the Mauler over him not completely paralyzing Dusty Rhodes. But also you watch the final match with Steve Keirn versus Bob Orton Jr. That's a really good match. The rest, like I said, the rest of the show is more just nostalgia. If you've never seen these guys wrestle or ever seen them at all, I would recommend people watch that. I would say, as far as and at the very end, Dusty Rhodes closes the show. Repeating that he did not. First of all, he said he did not place the bounty on the Missouri Mauler. So, that's the other thing you're gonna get a little. You have to get a little used to, from like I would say wrestling from '95 to going back. There's a lot of maulers. There's a lot of stompers. You kind of have to like grapplers. A lot of executioners. So you have to kind of figure out who's who. And this one was the Missouri Mauler. I'd never seen him wrestle before. He was actually pretty decent. I think that's the one thing you have to, like, when you're watching a lot of old wrestling, you have to realize that it's a different era, and you can't expect guys like the modern era where guys are just doing a lot of flips and dives and doing all this crazy stuff in the ring. Very different when you're watching more of a style that is more focused on the mat, headlocks, and then like every once in a while you see somebody doing a dive or speeding up the match. Like I said, like the Steve Keirn Bob Orton Jr. match, they were speeding up the match compared to everything else that was going on the show. But that's about it for this episode. Like I said, I recommend watching it just because it's probably one of the few complete Florida shows from the 1970s, and it does have really good interviews, and it does have that main event. Be sure to subscribe to the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel, and for wrestling show reviews, visit retrowrestling.com, and I will be back again with another review very soon.